I used to translate in my head all the time. I was talking with someone, mentally translated from English to Italian, and then it came out. It never sounded real English. It just sounded Italian with English words, and it was horrible. So let me tell you why this happens. Once you understand these three very simple reasons, you will never translate again, and you will move from this level once and for all. So let's get this party started. Reason number one is simply that you don't feed yourself with enough English. This bar represents English, represents the English you want to learn, right? This is you hanging from the bar. This is land, and this represents your language. This is how you see English when you try to speak and translate in your head. Difficult, very tall, something that you need to hang on very tightly. You need to hang on very tightly. And this is the biggest problem. Because reality is that the moment you translate in your head, you're hanging on, but from only one arm. The other one is trying to figure out what to say. It's trying to reach the bar, but it can't. And so what does it do? It tries to reach for the closest thing available. These are the poles keeping the bar in place. And because you can't reach English, you reach for the bar, which is the closest thing available. It's that middle ground between English and your language. And this, my friend, is the big problem. Because the moment you do that, you don't trust the English you know and rely on your language instead. Let me say this again. You don't trust the English you know and rely on your language instead. And this is completely normal and natural. You do it not because you're bad, you simply do it because it's what you do, it's what your brain does when it can't find the information it needs to actually speak this language. And so, what is the solution here? The solution, my friend, is simply stop relying on your language and start relying on English alone. And how do you do that? You need to reduce the space between English and your language. You need to see English as something closer to you, something that is reachable. You need to basically surround yourself with English as much as possible. You might think that this is absolutely difficult because you have a life, you have a job, you have a family, you have things to do. How can you possibly surround yourself, do basically more of what you're already doing, knowing also that what you're doing is not really working? It's not working because you are doing more. That's the thing. You don't have to do more. You need to replace what you do with English. You don't have to learn more. You don't have to study more. You have to replace. This is the key word. You have to replace what you do right now in your language with the same exact thing in English. And that is what allows you to become muscly, to get those muscles necessary to actually hang on to the English bar. The more you do that, the more muscly you become. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, very muscly, yeah. The more you replace your activities in your language with English activities, or better, with activities in English, the more muscly you become, and the more it becomes easier. It's gonna feel like your language is not so distant from English. Let me give you some examples now. If you're looking for a job, look for it in English. I'm serious. Look for a job in English. Don't look for a job in your language. look for a job that at the very least contains a little bit of English, a way for you to use this language. I know it's big, but you first of all want to build the foundation of your life. We want to replace the bigger pieces. And of course, your job is one of the biggest pieces you have to your advantage. This is exactly what I did to stop translating in my head. I started working as a waiter. Yes, just as a reason to surround myself with as much English as possible. I simply replaced my 9 to 5 job, which I didn't even like, with waiting on tables, speaking with tourists, and that allowed my English to finally start to become useful. I stopped studying and I started using it. Now, do you like this video? Do you better understand now why you keep translating in your head? If you do, make sure to subscribe to this channel, because on this channel, my goal is to make you go from B1 to C1. And I already got a lot of videos talking about this topic. So if you like what you're watching, make yourself home. You're more than welcome. And now back to us. Another thing you can do to replace your language with English is using it for your hobbies. For example, you like gardening. Search for the best gardening tools online, maybe here on YouTube, in English. Get in contact with other gardeners in English. Get into international gardeners communities. Do whatever you can to replace the little parts in your life that are already there. You have a job, you have family, you have responsibilities. You can't spend a lot of time doing things extra. So you want to replace what you do with things in English. But this is not enough, because the moment you start using your English for real, this is when something else happens. Your fear of making mistakes. And of course, this is the reason number 2. The moment you start being afraid of making mistakes, it's the moment you freeze one more time, you get stuck in your head. So let me explain this very, very clearly. I've been saying in the past that mistakes aren't important. So let me clarify this point. Mistakes are important. What's not important is you making them. Let me say it again. Mistakes are important. What's not important is you making those mistakes. But let me show you this graphically. Mistakes are just like these bricks. Every single mistake is like a brick. Bricks are very important, my friend, because I'm sure that you know what they are useful for. Now, let me show you something else. Here is your mistake, right here, and it's just a brick. A brick can be useful for 2 very different things. They can build a bad house, a house that is all broken, very bad, a very bad house. Like this is a broken house. You can't really live in it because this is the roof. You see, this is the roof, and the roof has a hole, and when it rains inside. This is a very bad house. Or it can build a very tall skyscraper. This is a skyscraper. It's so tall you can't see the end of it. You see how tall it is? This is a skyscraper, and this is a very bad house. Now, hear me out, because this is the most important part. This is called identity. Identity. And this one is called English. Your mistakes can either build your identity or your English, and only you get to decide. When you say, this is who I am, this is when you build this very ugly house. When you identify with your mistakes, this is when things really get pretty ugly. But the same mistake can also be used to build your English. So let's say, for example, that Instead of saying this may be good, you say it could be useful. Once you recognize that this is a mistake, this is when you've got two options. You can either say this is who I am, or you can use it to build your English. Here is what you said, right? It could be useful. This is wrong. But if you say this is who I am, I always make these mistakes, I can never speak good English, this is when you solidify this mistake, and this mistake gets part of your little bricks that make this very horrible house. This horrible house is made with all of these mistakes which you build and say they represent me. This is who I am. How to turn this into your English? You simply want to ask yourself, what can I replace it with? What phrase replaces this one in good, normal English? Nothing spectacular, all right? In everyday English. It may be useful. So every single time you're using this expression, you want to remember that you're building your skyscraper, which is so tall you can't see the end of it. And to do that, you need to replace it actively with the correct expression. It may be useful. If you take every mistake you make and you start using it to build your English, these mistakes are actually gonna provide the foundations of your next level. This is, of course, your first level. Then you're gonna grow, grow stronger, and every level will build on the past mistakes, which will function as proof that you can make it. Now, let's say that you've actually followed the first two suggestions. There's still one more thing, there's still one more reason that may still keep you into translation mode. And the reason is because you have been learning English word by word. And once again, let me show you this graphically. When you're used to learn word by word, this is exactly how you see English when someone speaks it. You see literally the letters composing the words you are listening. And this is what's causing you to translate in your head. Do you want to see how it works? You already know the meaning of learn, right? What's learn in your language? I'm sure you know it, right? Of course you do. And this is the problem. You have learned the single word. For example, in Italian, learn is imparare. And now what happens when I forget how to say learn in English? I remember imparare. And so if I rely on my memory, the first time I don't remember, I'm going to think about the same word in Italian. And that's what happens every time you translate from your native language into English. And this has major implications when you try to speak English. For example, look at what I wrote right here. I used the word learn instead of learning. And this is exactly because in Italian, imparare is both learn and learning. So how to avoid that? Well, you've already learned so many words this way that you can't unlearn anything. At the same time, you need to completely remove the words from your environment. You need to start listening to English without subtitles, without anything written, because you want to learn to recognize the chunks that form this language, not the single words, but the whole thing together. The whole thing together. And now listen to this. Translating in your head becomes very difficult when you learn English in chunks, because you simply lose the connection with the single words. You simply lose the connection with the single words. And this is when you can finally start getting unstuck from this translating situation, which is literally ruining your possibility of becoming really fluent in this language.